Hello everyone, this is Marco and welcome back to my channel. Today we'll be taking a closer look at this brand new Jurassic World Legacy Collection Roaring Real Feel Carnotaurus from the Reimagined line by Mattel. That was a mouthful and a half. But before we take a closer look at the dinosaur and this release itself, I think we should talk about the Reimagined line as a whole first, just to get a bit of a feel of what it's going for. This brand new line is a little bit confusing. I made a video about this figure's reveal way back when it was announced on the Beyond the Gates video, the one presented by Neems. And I must say it was quite an exciting and interesting reveal. It took everyone by surprise and it does look really cool. A modernized version of the Kenner Demon Carnotaurus? That's awesome. But in that video we covered the new rebranding that Mattel decided to adopt. I tried to make sense of it, and I think I kind of got the idea, but it's still pretty confusing. I mean, they just merged the 93 Classic line with the Legacy Collection, and they're just making 93 Classic ones under the name of Legacy Collection. As we all know, the Legacy Collection was a toyified version of what we saw in the films. So in that line we got movie-inspired vehicles and dinosaurs and sets, which was amazing. Everyone loved that line. But I don't understand how they kept that branding for the Reimagined line when the Reimagined line doesn't have anything to do with the films. It makes sense that they ditched the 93 Classic line, as that was kind of limiting to anything that was released in 1993, and they tried to release something that wasn't. For example, they released the Dennis Nedry set with the 2001 Hasbro-inspired Raptor in the 93 Classic line. So I'm guessing from there they decided that didn't make much sense and they're going to use the Reimagined line from now on. But my number one fear was that they were going to use the Reimagined line as an excuse to release repaints and just random things that don't make sense. We all know that Mattel loves to release repaints upon repaints and retools and stuff. And I had a feeling that by releasing this brand new Carnotaurus, it would get everyone excited for this new line. And then later on, they would start releasing repaints and retools of stuff that doesn't make sense. I was hoping that wasn't going to happen, but we got confirmation after this Carnotaurus with that horrendous Atrociraptor helicopter set. I know a lot of people don't like it. I've had a lot of messages about that. So yeah, it's interesting that they would release something as awesome as that Carnotaurus and then just use retools and repaints to pack it out a bit. And I really can't wait to see what they're going to do next, if they're going to do something really cool again, or if it's going to be another repaint. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. I don't want to say I called it, but I called it. Anyway, let's take a closer look at the figure now. I've been rambling on a bit too long. Here is the figure in the box, and I believe the box art was designed by Neems, or partially designed by Neems. I think he was involved in the project somehow, and I gotta say, it does look fabulous. We're greeted with an open box, and the backdrop looks so cool. There's a tropical landscape and there's a massive volcano erupting in the background, as well as some really nice little fog details on the bottom. In the front, at the bottom of the box, we are greeted by the Jurassic World Legacy Collection logo, and then on the far right, there's the Reimagined one. I really do like the Reimagined line logo design. It has similar vibes to the 2001 React Attack Hasbro line package design, if you know what I mean. That sort of black and yellow danger tape in the background does have a similar feel. Talking about that black and yellow danger design, there is a Try Me label there, and we know that this dinosaur has some sound effects, so we're going to give that a go later on in the review. Taking a look at the back of the box, there is a really big render of the Carnotaurus itself. There's a little bit of that 30th anniversary backdrop appearing here and there, which is really nice. Love those colors. Reminds me a bit of the Ford Explorer. On the top left, we have the Legacy Collection logo again. And on the bottom left, there is that Atrociraptor set that I was talking about. Let's take the figure out of the box, and then we'll take a closer look at the sculpt. How do you remove the figure from the box? Well, you just have to cut these ribbons here. As you might have noticed, the Carnotaurus is still stuck in there. There are some pegs under the feet that we need to twist. And we access those by cutting the tape on the side of the box right here and here. We unfold a bit of the box to reveal some paperwork. and the pegs themselves. We just have to twist those right there. And voila, the figure is free. We get 2 sheets of paper. One of them is the legal don't swallow the figure or you might choke kind of stuff. And the other one is instructions on how to use the figure. It tells you about the scan code in its thigh, and you can add this dinosaur to your virtual collection through the app. So now let's bring in the star of the show, the demon Carnotaurus itself. It's all very rubbery. It is very reminiscent of the Red Rex released by Mattel for the '93 classic line. It's the same sort of rubber. And straight away you can tell what this figure references. It's a modernized or reimagined version of the Demon Carnotaurus by Kenner. I must say this figure could have benefited with some capture gear, because unlike the Kenner one, this one doesn't have as much playability. You're just getting a really pretty figure, and that's pretty much it. But with the Kenner one, you got a proper set. To me, this one looks leaps and bounds better than the Kenner one, and that is mainly due to the sculpt. At first glance, I can tell this sculpt looks beautiful, but I can also tell that the paint is a bit lacking too. As with all of my reviews, we'll start by looking into the sculpt first. Proportions wise, it all looks pretty good. The feet aren't oversized, they're pretty spot on actually, I should say. The head doesn't look too big and the tail doesn't look too short, although it is a bit on the short side, but not too bad at all. I think this is a repurposed sculpt. The body sculpt looks very similar to the Control and Conquer Carnotaurus, or another Carnotaurus from the main line, I'm not too sure which one, but the head is certainly reworked. I like it a lot because the whole figure does seem a bit more realistic than the Kenner one in terms of proportions and detail. It looks like they took the Carnotaurus from the film and just changed the head sculpt a little bit to give it that slightly exaggerated feel from the 90s, and that's very, very tastefully done. I think this figure is a perfect balance. Taking a closer look at the head sculpt, you can definitely tell that this head is inspired by the film version, but they accentuated the horns on it to really drive the point that this is the Demon Carnotaurus. It has very similar detail to the Hammond Collection one. All the main big skin scales are right there in the right place, but it all feels a little bit more muted. It might be because of the nature of the rubber, but it doesn't matter as this isn't a premium collector's figure, so that's totally fine. I like the teeth, they're quite sharp and small, which is good, but I'm quite shocked that the teeth aren't a separate molded and casted piece of rubber, but they're instead cast in that same exact piece of that pink rubber used for the inside of the mouth, but with just some off-white paint over it. That really surprised me, as lately every single figure that Mattel has released around this size has separately molded, casted and inserted teeth. So I'm not going to be surprised if when kids play this after a while, the paint on the teeth is going to start to rub off. Looking at it from the front, you can tell that the head is a bit too wide. It's got a bit of a derpy look from the front, but I guess that's fine. It's not too obvious like with the original Kenner one. That one is the king of derp. But yeah, sculpt wise, the head looks really good. I love the detail on the tongue too. It's really nice. Moving down to the neck. Again, this is very similar to what we've seen before with other Carnotaurus toys by Mattel. There's some really nice spikes on the top of the head and some nice detailed scaly skin. But again, don't expect it to be super crisp. Looking at the torso, it all looks fabulous. I've said it before, someone at Mattel really loves the Carnotaurus because they always put so much love into this sculpt. And because the figure is made of rubber, they can make the spikes quite a bit sharper than other versions with hard plastic. Also, another thing that I quite like is that there are no visible seams when molding and casting the figure, so it all looks like one big continuous piece. Usually you'd see 2 seams going down the length of the figure, from the neck all the way down to the hips and on the belly side too. There's some really nice wrinkles in the skin. There's no real visible rib cage too. Mattel tends to sculpt the rib cages a bit unrealistically, and to see that they didn't put that here is kind of nice, to be honest. I'd rather have a figure of a nice healthy looking Carnotaurus than one with really weird ribs. Looking at the arms, these are significantly smaller than the ones on the Hammond Collection Carnotaurus. And these ones here are a little bit more accurate in size. I love how rubbery they feel, and those tiny little fingers, they look like little baby hands. Looking at the belly, you can spot the speaker hole. And I'm not sure why Mattel keeps going with this holy design over the scratch marks design, because that one is far superior. I'm not sure if you're aware, but trypophobia is a real problem out there. And a lot of people are put off by this holy design. The gaming beaver included. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Google trypophobia. Also, slashes make a lot more sense from a gameplay point of view, because kids could just act as if the dinosaur's been scratched by another one during a fight. Taking a look at the legs, they are very muscular, and they got some really nice wrinkling detail on them too. There is the scan code in the middle of the thigh. If you open up the door, you can see it right there. I know some people have changed the scan code thing and sculpted in some muscle instead, and this could be a really cool dino damage piece. Going down to the calves, you can see some really nice musculature there. And then the feet. The feet look fabulous. They look really, really good. Going down towards the tail, there is a really big seam, unfortunately, especially on mine. On the left side, it doesn't look as bad, but on the right side, it's quite evident, which isn't ideal, but at least the detail on it isn't too bad. You can see some more of the spikes going all the way down, almost to the tip of the tail. There are some bigger osteoderms on the tail too, and some nice and subtle wrinkling going on. Now we've talked about the sculpt, let's talk about the paint. I think the paint is what is holding this figure back. I'll explain more later. But you can see that this figure is mainly cast in this black color, and it has some really bright, vibrant red patterns going from the head down to the tail. This is very iconic of the demon Carnotaurus, although the patterns are quite different. They're a bit more like tile patterns on the original, and they're a bit more stripy on this one. It has some very bright, vibrant green for the eyes, and they are painted pretty well. As I mentioned earlier, the teeth are painted, but the mouth parts inside are cast in this pink color. But one thing I think they should have painted is the horns. The horns are quite iconic to this figure, and them having no paint is kind of a missed opportunity in my opinion. That being said, the original one doesn't have any paint on the horns either, so that's probably why they didn't. It does have some red paint on the thighs, which is nice. You don't always see paint on the legs with Mattel figures. They did paint the tail, but it didn't go all the way down to the tip of it. It would look a lot better if the paint went all the way down. It does have a very sorry, pathetic attempt to a counter shading color. It's only present in a very small area on the chest. Speaking of lack of paint, the dew claws aren't painted on this, of course, and there's no paint in the wound bit where the scan code is. If it came with capture gear, then I would have given it a pass, because they would have had to have cut costs somewhere, and paint is the number one place to look at. But since this figure didn't come with any other accessories, and they cut costs with the paint, it doesn't have any actual action features, so you're only buying this figure for it to look pretty on your shelf. And when they cut cost on the paintwork on a figure that is supposed to just look pretty, then that's just not on. This is what the figure could have looked like if it was painted properly. Here's a little comparison for you. And if they really didn't want to add some extra paint, they really should have given us some capture gear for it. The only sort of action feature it has is the sounds. We'll get into that later, right at the end. But yeah, this figure doesn't even have that much articulation either. It has the standard leg articulation. No, actually, no, it doesn't, because the legs only go backwards and forwards. They don't spread out. And by spreading out, I mean that the legs can pivot in and out. That's what they usually do with figures of this size, and even smaller ones too. So they just cut that out. It's got some arm articulation. They can go backwards and forwards, but these can swivel in and out, which is an odd choice, considering it didn't use its arms much. It's not a raptor or an allosaurus where it would actually use its arms. But keeping the extra articulation on such little arms is redundant. But removing it from the legs is just silly. Like, I'm not being funny, I'm just going about it logically. But the main thing people are upset about, that this figure doesn't have any sort of mouth articulation. Taking a closer look at the head, you can see that they've added some slots where the skin membranes or jaw muscles slot in. So if you want to squeeze the mouth shut, you can, but then it just comes back open. Originally with the Kenner figures, the dinosaurs were posed in a way where if you squeeze the neck, the jaw would open, and if you let go, it would sort of close shut again. Not really shut, but close. That would help with gameplay as well, because that means you can squeeze on the neck, pick up a figure with the jaw, and release the neck, and it would hold on to the figure. It was so iconic to those figures that I even added that feature on my larger Robosaurs. One thing I'd like to point out is that when you squeeze the mouth shut, it has an underbite. And that's pretty much it with articulation. I mean, the tail isn't posable. I think it does have some sort of stuffing inside though, so it's kind of rigid. It's not completely hollow. Unless you want to count the swiveling at the ankles, which is implemented so that it could fit in the box properly, then that's it in terms of articulation. These are the sound effects when you press the hidden button on the hips. My first impression is that these sound effects are quite short in length, but they all sound really good. So let's recap. This is clearly a really good figure, but the main selling point is that this looks like the demon Carnotaurus. But to me, the sculpt really does play a big part too. And the other good thing is that it's got real feel rubber skin. But that's mainly it. The articulation is basic at best pretty much, with no hip articulation or an articulated jaw. The paintwork is pretty basic too, and the lack of capture gear is really noticeable. So is it an improvement over the Kenner one? Well, I guess that's a little bit more subjective, but to me, yes, kind of. I think the sculpt alone does make this figure better overall. But if you're a kid, there really isn't much playability without that capture gear. That being said, today's kids generation is a little bit different. It's a lot more tech and iPad based. And some people could argue that all that added virtual playability is a valid substitute. So I guess it works for the kids, but for collectors, I really think they should either have put more effort into the paint or at least given us some capture gear. And let's be real here, this figure is totally aimed at nostalgic fans. But I can't help but feel sorry for the kids once they grow up. If they become collectors like me and you, they won't be able to experience that same magic and joy because the app won't be available anymore. Unfortunately, app longevity isn't really a thing. So when they're eventually feeling nostalgic, they can dig out their toy again, but they won't be able to relive all that fun they had with the app. But yes, since this figure is clearly aimed at collectors, I think they really should have added that capture gear. So I think I'm going to be giving this figure an 8 out of 10. I highly recommend you go and get this figure. In the next video, I'll be talking about something really special, a product that is some of the best out there. I think it's the best thing that the dinosaur community has to offer. So I hope you look forward to that. It is going to be freaking awesome. Thank you so much for watching.
I would like to give a massive thank you to all of my Patreons. Seriously guys, your support really does mean the world to me, as it helps me do what I love for you. You help me buy materials, and most of all, you give me a helping hand with improving the quality of the content of my videos. Even if it's just a small donation, every little helps.